How's it going, soldiers? Welcome back to another video. My name is Sohuzi, and today is going to be a pretty interesting video for me, mostly because this video is going to be me explaining about this story I have been planning out for about 2 years now, actually, and I just want to go and tell you guys about it, actually. And I've been posting some chapters, I think like 3 chapters, but you see, I'm actually more of like a talkative kind of guy than a writing type. I don't read a lot of books, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, so writing a book isn't gonna be much of my strong suit either. So I'd much rather just condense all that is going to be happening in today's video instead. So in a minute, you're gonna hear me basically talking about the Record of Artopia, which is once again a name that can change, but right now that is what it is. So yeah, but I hope you guys do enjoy it. And, you can listen to it in the background or whatever you want. But yeah, so this is the other me taking it away and telling you about the Record of Artopia. Let me spin you a tale, right? Basically, we have this one king who died, okay? Which is pretty sad. But basically, he has 2 cousins. One of them is Zoe Vlahakis, and the other one is Rakesh Viren. And they basically come from 2 kind of small families. Now, Zoe is a pretty proud and, strong-minded kind of woman who wants to take the throne from her late cousin. And Rakesh Viren is a very level-headed, calculative planner. So, of course, it is no surprise of the fact that the Viren family was able to take control of this king's throne. Now, this king was actually the ruler of a place called Britannia. And Britannia is a nice, kind of world, kind of inspired by Britain, to be honest. And yeah, it's more of during its medieval period right now. So basically now with Rakesh being the new king of Britannia, seems like all is going pretty well until it doesn't, because Rakesh is assassinated. That is right, he's assassinated. He's assassinated in the capital city of Britannia by a man, or boy, named Leon Arakos. Now, Leon Arakos actually seems to be the illegitimate child of the late king of Britannia. And he was born in Godstadt, which is the place where he comes from. And his mother's pretty poor, because a lot of the people in Godstadt are just poor. That's just the way it is. So Leon, after hearing that his father is dead and basically the throne is available, he takes it upon himself to basically go and take the throne. So that is what he did, and he assassinated Rakesh. Now, of course, this does not go well with all the other people in Britannia, but in due time he does gain their respect, whereas he also already had the respect of people in the place he came from, Godstadt. So yeah, now that all is great, and he renamed Britannia to Artopia, which is where we are now going to be starting the Record of Artopia. So after Leon is eventually his grandson, Aegon, and Aegon Arakos is now a king that lives in a time where he is in an all-out war against many other countries in the world. Belroy, which is basically their version's equivalent of America, is basically fighting back against Artopian forces to try and stop them from trying to take over Belroy. Now, the battle so far has been taking quite a long time, but weirdly enough, eventually the tables will be turned, and so Aegon's friend, Ludwig, will eventually discover about magic. That's right, magic is in this story, okay? So basically this magic is kind of like a blue aura type of thing, where he is basically able to make kind of this electrical kind of thing going around him. When he breathes in, he's able to tap into this form of magic. And this form of magic can make things like, can control wind, air, fire, water, and the very earth that they stand on. So with this new discovery, Ludwig is basically tasked to find and teach other people who may have this form of magic within them, and he basically teaches a lot of them of how to fight with it, which eventually leads to Belroy being taken over by Artopia and many other countries being taken over by Artopia as well. A lot of other races also eventually join in on the land of Artopia. Many races, including elves and orcs and beastmen, also come into Artopia and now lives with the rest of the Artopian people as well. Now, Ludwig was duly compensated. He was knighted, so now he is Sir Ludwig. He was able to change the capital city of Artopia to whatever name he chose, which was Ludenfeld, which is the one that he chose. And Aegon decided to name this form of magic Azure, due to its blue color, basically. So eventually we move forward once again in time, and magic is something that is well known, because Artopia is now seen as the land of sorcerers, due to the fact that there are many magic users. Maxwell Arakos, which is now the new king of Artopia, was born to be a fierce ruler of Artopia, but married a quite modest lady in Godstadt, and they both had twin sons. The older one is named Nicholas, and the younger one named Oscar. They're not really that far apart, it's only like a couple of minutes apart, but they are still, older brother and younger brother, twin brothers nonetheless. Now, Nicholas was born with the ability to use Azure, whereas Oscar was not able to do anything of the sort, which was unfortunate, and is also the reason why his father focused more on teaching Nicholas to being the next king of Artopia, as he would be the first king in Artopia that would have the ability to use magic, which is quite a big thing. Oscar instead learned the ways of the blade, and eventually both of them still did become great brothers, very close with each other. And this is kind of shown in a day when, both of them are pretty young at this point. Let's say about maybe 15, 16 perhaps. And Oscar kind of catches the eye of this young maiden named Victoria Boyle. Now, Victoria Boyle is just another girl, basically, that also comes from Artopia, not any other place, but she is of a high-class family, basically. And Oscar's plan is to impress Victoria, and he asks Nicholas if he can basically win their sparring match right now. And so Nicholas, being the great brother that he is, decides to allow Oscar the win, which in Oscar's luck, she now knows of his existence now, as she's very impressed with his sword techniques. And it seems like Oscar is on a pretty good winning streak right now for him anyway. So we fast forward now, and the twins are about the age 24. They receive news from an oracle that Oscar's future child will possess the power of the unnatural god Oxus. And the family, of course, go out and celebrate and all that, because now they found out that their future descendant is going to have the power of a god, which is amazing. They must also change their last name from being Aracos to Auxilia, seeing as, they need to make sure that the descendants also have the same power as well, so they must be known with a different name, one that is picked out by Oxus. Now, let's take a little bit of a sidetrack right now and discuss about these gods. Now, you see, we have 5 gods in general, and these gods are as followed. Oxus, as I said, is the god of the supernatural, basically. Anything that has to do with magic or magical creatures, which is more of a mixture of both Oxus and Draxus, but we'll get to him in a minute when there are magical creatures involved. But Oxus is basically anything that has to do with spirits or magic or anything like that. So then we also have Cronus, and Cronus is basically, as you might expect, the god of time, and anything like past, present, and future can be seen by Cronus, though he doesn't try and look into the future. He just lets things play out as they are just watchers of the world. And then there is Dimitus. Dimitus is the goddess of nature, and so she basically watches over anything that has to do with plants or any vegetation, which is also something that Divus, which is the god of nourishment, also helps her into, as he gives any of the nourishing properties of fruits that Dimitus also creates, and water, and anything like that. Now, Draxus is the god of beasts, and anything like any animals or any magical beasts are basically done by Draxus. Now, when it comes to magical beasts, both Oxus and Draxus have a part to play when it comes to these two things coming together. Now, Avus is the god of mankind. Now, this does not just mean humans. This could also mean elves or orcs. Anything of intelligent knowledge, basically, is watched over by Mavus. When it comes to magical, living, intelligent people, both Oxus and Avus are the ones who are responsible for watching over those kinds of people, basically. Now, the whole part with the gods and all that, I'll go and also put in the last chapter in the description of this video, talking about basically what these gods are all about, and a little bit about their origin stories. If you want to know about that, it's down in the description. So, check that out if you want to. But we get back onto the most important parts now. So, Oscar and Victoria eventually get married, and they have a child called Eleanor. Now, as the oracle stated, she has to have a different last name than Aracos, so her last name is Eleanor Auxilia. And so Oscar and Victoria decide to give her full name as Eleanor Aracos Auxilia. So 16 years later, Artopia has been through quite a lot. There was an orc civil war, the elves have discovered a new form of magic named Aero, and Aero is basically anything you may think that an Esper, such as levitation or mind control, that's basically what Aero specializes in, and that is something that is basically found, whereas Azure is found through breathing in through the lungs and so bringing out that energy. Aero is more found through the mind, so that is basically how all that works. But it's quite also a difficult thing to master, but either way, still a magic type that exists, separated from Azure. It is green in color, whereas, as I said before, Azure is blue, so it's always easy to tell which is which, and what kind of magic they are using just by the color. Eleanor has been trained, or is being trained by her uncle Nicholas, and is mostly being raised by her mother, seeing as now Oscar is the new king of Artopia, a decision made by his late father. So yes, Maxwell Arakaos has passed away now. You may pause the video if you want to take some time to process this, but that is the case, so we move on. With Eleanor, which has been getting used to her abilities so far and has found quite an interest in a young squire named Artie, which, is quite a random and weird name, but his name will make sense as it's just a shortened version of his full name. So basically, here is a dilemma that Oscar is going through right now. He sent out a spy to go and collect some information about the other countries, and what this spy brought back to him is the fact that these other countries are planning to kill Oscar, actually, and deciding to take control of Artopia and thus the world, which is not great, as this can start a whole second global war that the world has ever seen, basically. And basically, these countries just don't think that Oscar is as intimidating as his father, Maxwell, which is understandable, as Oscar isn't really as fierce or as hard-headed as his father was, but obviously Oscar does not want this to go and end up in a global war anyway. So he has to try and figure out a way to kind of calm the situation, and luckily he finds a kind of way that he could do that, and the only way for it to be achieved is by going to the strongest dessert user he knows, his brother Nicholas. So Oscar's plan goes as follows. As Nicholas makes an enemy that will basically be strong against the other countries, but weak against Artopia, so that all the Artopian forces can basically be able to defeat them, and show that Artopia is still as strong as it always and ever was. And this is something that might be a little bit difficult for Nicholas, but of course he sees that his brother is stressing quite a lot, and he does not want to go and disappoint him. So of course he decides, fine, he will go and do it. So he spends from hours to days to weeks to even months trying to find a way to basically make these enemies that his brother so desperately wants. After a couple of months, he finds out another form of Azure, which he is able to summon undead creatures and manifest weapons from the very aura that this form of magic creates. Is also able to erode objects, whereas Azure can be able to enchant them. This new form of magic can basically erode them. So with this, Nicholas decides to name this form of magic Zorai, and so he makes monsters and basically goes around the world, taking some time away from Artopia to plant around the world these monsters that are quite difficult for anyone else that is outside of Artopia to defeat, but when he plants them in Artopia, they're quite weak and quite easy to defeat. Nothing that the average person can handle, but more of something that the average Artopian god can be able to handle, basically. So all is going well, but unfortunately it would seem that the other countries' leaders are now suspecting that Oscar is the one who is planting all of these monsters, which is not a good thing, actually. But of course, Nicholas, as the older brother that he is, comes to the rescue, bringing up that these monsters are actually being controlled by some other form of magic that they've never seen before. It's kind of purple in color, and so there's no way that it can be Oscar, as he has no magic ability, as everyone knows, all the way from birth. So, of course, Nicholas then goes and tells him that it must be someone who is controlling them. And Nicholas then eventually brings a name to the table. Egon is the one who is making all of these monsters from a dark kind of technique of Azure that he calls Zorai. Now, weirdly enough, none of the country leaders ever ask of how Nicholas gets this kind of information, but they now understand that this Egon man must be dealt with in time and very quickly, so that these monsters do not run rampant and eventually destroy their whole world. So, of course, this plan to kill Egon is postponed for quite some time, 2 years now, to kill this Egon man, as Nicholas needs a place to actually make all of these monsters, and so he has gained himself a secretive castle that he has to himself. So he just makes sure that no one is able to get to this castle. No one knows of this castle except for him and Oscar. So, with all of this happening, eventually, at some point in Artopia, a bunch of miners have found this cult worshipping an unknown god. And Artie, who is now known as Artorius after becoming a knight, joins his father, Archibald, to go and raid this cave and find out what this cult is all about. Now, apparently, this cult believes in an unknown and seventh god, Nullus, who is the god of the end. Anything that ends, whether it be life or even the very universe, he is there to basically watch over it. And it seems that everyone does not know of this unknown god named Nullus, as it's not a name that has ever been uttered ever before. But basically this cult had these 7 crystals as well, that they called the Sin Crystals. These Sin Crystals were apparently a gift from their god Nullus, that their power is great but also unknown, which they were going to find out what the power was, but they were unfortunately stopped by the knights. Now, Oscar gives these crystals to each of the lords of Artopia, while keeping 2 for one for him and one for Nicholas. Whereas he got the Sin Crystal of Sloth, Nicholas got the Sin Crystal of Pride. So, with that, they all go their separate ways with these Sin Crystals. So, at one point, Nicholas unfortunately discovers a spy surveying his secret castle, which is not such a great thing, as he needs to make sure that no one finds out that he is in fact Egon. This castle is also where he's been making some machines in his spare time, and so he suspects the other lords are trying to either find out who this Egon is and suspect that it's him, or they're trying to steal his Sin Crystal, which is also not something that he enjoys. He has been quite disgruntled as of late, and he is not in a good mood for anything to get in his way. He tells his brother Oscar of this news, which comes to Oscar as a surprise, and he promises his brother that he'll make sure that he speaks to the other lords to make sure that they kind of calm everything and make sure that they don't send any more spies to go and find out what he has been up to. Alas, Nicholas does not believe that his brother can truly get the job done. He has known his brother ever since he was born, and he also knows that Oscar is quite a soft kind of person. He doesn't like confrontation, and so will not strike fear into these other lords to make sure that they truly stop. So he decides that he might try and make a machine that can be able to go and find out what these lords are up to, or even make a machine that can be able to handle the Sin Crystal so that he is able to keep it safe and in something that can protect it even when he's not around it as well. Alas, there is no machine that he has been able to create that can actually hold the power of this Sin Crystal, as it seems that it's way too powerful for any, once again, machine for Nicholas to even keep hold of, as they just end up falling apart, exploding, anything of the sort. So Nicholas comes up with a plan. Seeing as humans have been evolved to basically use their hearts to keep them going, perhaps he needs to make a living creature that can be able to hold the sin crystal within it and actually use its power. So he basically starts the homunculus project, where he will make a creature that can be able to hold the power of the sin crystal within it. He tries 10, 30, 60 times, still no luck in even making a creature that is alive. So after a family dinner, Eleanor actually invites Artorius to meet her father, her mother, and her uncle. Now, Nicholas is well aware of who Artorius is, as he's the one who has been protecting his niece from any of the monsters that he has spread around Artopia. And he knows that though these monsters are supposed to be weaker in Artopia, Artorius shows great strength in his abilities and is also the son of Archibald, which is one of the royal guards of Artopia. So clearly there's something to be had there, a very powerful kind of person. Nicholas goes back and basically tries to make a homunculus that is inspired by Artorius. Unfortunately, none of these still work out. They try to come up, but none of them can still actually stay alive. He thinks that maybe the machine doesn't have the proper information fed into it to make the proper nerves and bones and structure of a human to keep it alive. So he decides, though he is very much against it, to go and kidnap Artorius instead. He is battling with these thoughts, but alas, they overcome him, and so he has no choice but to do so. He basically sends a bunch of monsters to go and find a forest to basically wreak havoc upon. And a bunch of locals tell Artorius about this, and Artorius gets into a fight with these monsters. But these monsters are a lot more stronger than originally anticipated, and from whatever kind of monster that he's ever fought before. They eventually defeat him and bring him to Nicholas's secretive castle, and from there, Nicholas puts Artorius into a kind of tube where he basically zaps Artorius with this energy to kind of scan his whole body. With this, the machine is now able to get the proper information that it needs to make its first homunculus that is alive. Nicholas names this homunculus Ozymandias, as the homunculus holds the pride crystal, and from one of the poems that he has read, Ozymandias was quite a prideful king that he has heard in the poem. So it makes sense to name this homunculus Ozymandias. Due to this, Ozymandias was quite prideful, but above all else, at least respected his creator, Nicholas. So he has been training and learned the ways of using Azure, while also learning how to use Zorai, which is a darker form of Azure, as I have brought up once before. Ozymandias is sent on a secretive kind of mission to basically go and find out what these two lords are up to, as Nicholas has gained information that two lords of Artopia have come to a place in Ludenfeld to discuss something secretive. So he sends Ozymandias to go and basically find out what this is all about. Ozymandias, of course, does not want to disappoint him, so he goes and finds out that the lord that possesses the Crystal of Greed and the lord that possesses the Crystal of Wrath actually are planning on stealing all the other crystals in Artopia to eventually then steal the Crystal of Sloth and the Crystal of Pride from the twin brothers. So now, finding out about this information, you can tell that clearly Nicholas is not happy, and so he is gaining quite a lot of rage at this point for these other kings. With that, he decides that he will send Ozymandias to go and steal these crystals and take it away from these lords, as he does not believe that they deserve them any longer. And so Ozymandias prepares and takes off to go and find the other sin crystals and take them back to his master, Egon, or as we know, Nicholas. So some of you may know that I have made a game called Ozzy's Oblivion, which does follow the kind of end part of Ozzy's adventure and all that he has been made to do by Nicholas or Egon. So I have been planning to bring out these chapters to you guys, but of course once again these chapters aren't something that I am well versed in writing anymore. I'm not really the kind of person who likes to write. So I wanted to make a video explaining the whole plot of the Record of Artopia, as well as a little bit of the plot as to what will be happening in Ozzy's Oblivion, which is a kind of short comic that I want to start doing and bring out to you guys and start uploading it onto Twitter so that you guys can follow along and eventually see how Ozymandias will kind of complete his mission and what happens next. But as I said, in the background I have been drawing a character that I call Kugo, and Kugo Mystical, which is his full name, is basically going to be the main character of the current timeline of the Record of Artopia, which takes place about 500 years after these events that I have explained to you now. So it's going to be quite far off into the future. Nothing that is basically like modern day, it's just anything that is around maybe 1500s kind of aesthetic. Anything kind of like steampunk, but it's not going to be steampunk. So yeah, but once again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, as you can see, Kujo Mystical out here being created by me, and just any other characters. So I am going to be updating anything about the Record of Artopia, any new characters that I'm going to be designing and drawing will be then shared onto my Twitter account. I have also been planning to make a new type of video format for you guys, and hopefully I can be able to bring that to you guys around probably October, as I don't really want to be planning on uploading anything too much in September next month, but there is quite a special parody video waiting for you guys in September if I can get it done, hopefully. But other than that, that is basically the video. I don't know how long will be left of the video at this point, so I might just put some music over the remaining bits of drawing Kujo. And yeah, so make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I will see you all on the flip side. Once again, follow my Twitter account if you want to keep in touch with the Record of Artopia. And by the way guys, if you ever want to make any kind of bits of the Record of Artopia surrounding this time, basically, before anything of the future is revealed, you can go and make your own stories, basically. Any other character that takes place in Artopia, maybe they are a Azure user, maybe they are an Arrow user. You can basically make your own story if you want to. Just put Record of Artopia and your own title underneath that, you know? So yeah, it's up to you if you want to go and make a story yourself as well that takes place in the universe. I'm completely fine with that. Just make sure you credit me at least. So yeah, you know, I'm always here to see creativity and seeing if anybody else wants to make even like a short story at least. And yeah, that's basically it. So once again, like, subscribe, follow my Twitter account, and I will see you on the flip side. Peace.